In the last video, I said something that I want to come back to. I said the developers who are struggling with these tools aren't struggling because the tool is bad. They are struggling because they jump directly into using it without building the foundation first. And I told you that you haven't done that. I told you that you have built the foundation. So now it's time to actually build on it. Because here's the thing, what we covered in part 1, installing Claude Code, Claude.md, plan mode, managing context, keeping an eye on the cost, that is the right way to think. But it is still you doing most of the work. But today that is going to change. Today we are going to look at Claude Code the way it was actually designed to be used. Not as a smarter autocomplete, but as an engineering platform that can work in parallel, connect to the tools you already use, and remember exactly how to behave on your project. Now, after today's video, the shift that is going to happen in the way that you use Claude Code will not be a small thing. In part 1, I said the question is no longer about how do I write this. The question now is what I'm trying to build and how do I communicate this clearly to my agent. Now, today's video is going to push that even further, because the next question after that would be how do I stop being the bottleneck entirely? Now, let's get into it. Alright, so this was the solution that we were working on in our part 1, and let's bring up Solution Explorer for once. And we'll see that we had this as a minimal API. So we had a few get endpoints and post endpoint and also a put endpoint. Then we added some middlewares to it, which was just adding a header and some value to it. And more or less, we also added a little validator, which was validating the request object. So in all, this was the project solution that we built in our first part of the video. Starting with this video, we are going to bring in some of the tools that we use regularly, and we are going to give these tools to Claude Code. Now, the very first thing that we want the Claude should have is the GitHub, the access to our GitHub repository. Now, how do we connect Claude Code to our GitHub? Now, we do this via something called as MCP. Now, before we connect anything, let me quickly explain what MCP is. Now, MCP stands for Model Context Protocol. Now, it is basically a way for Claude Code to reach out to areas outside your code and talk to other tools and services. Think of it like a USB for AI agents. Different tools, but just one standard plug. Without MCP, Claude Code only knows what's there in your code base. But with MCP, it can talk to GitHub, look up NuGet package details, and even pull live documentation from Microsoft Learn, all from inside the same session. The first one that we are adding today is GitHub. And the reason this matters is because Claude Code right now can see your code base, but it cannot really see anything outside this, cannot really see any of the pull requests that are open, any of the issues that might have been logged on GitHub, and also it cannot really see any of your GitHub repo structure. Now, once we connect to this GitHub MCP, you can literally ask Claude to just raise a PR, to query PR, summarize an issue, and it will just do it. Alright, so now in order to connect Claude to GitHub, we would need a GitHub MCP token. So for that, you will have to come to your GitHub dashboard, go to your profile section over here and choose setting. After that, choose developer settings, then come to this personal access token, fine-grained tokens, and generate a new token. Then let's call this as Claude MCP token. Now you can use the same description here, and then choose all repositories. You can select one of these options. I'm going to go with all repositories, and now we need to add a few permissions. I'm going to add the following permission: content, pull request, and then issues, and also let's add workflows, and then commit status. Now these are the permissions that will help me to fully integrate Claude Code with my GitHub rep. Now I'm going to say read and write permissions to all of these, and then I'm going to say generate token, and let's copy this and let's come back to our VS Code. Now make a note of this token because you are going to need that further. Alright, so now that you have created your token, just open a PowerShell window on your machine as an administrator and paste this command. Now don't worry, I'm going to give this command in the description. You can copy it from there and hit enter. Now once you have added this, you have installed GitHub MCP server for your Claude Code. Now come back to your VS Code and on the terminal just summon Claude and look for /mcp. Now once you hit that, you will see that GitHub MCP is now connected. Now you can hit enter and you can look at the tools that you get with this GitHub MCP server. So now you can create or update files, search repository, create repository, push your files, or even get file contents. Now if you want to come out of it, just hit escape one more time, and you are out of that MCP, of that GitHub MCP. Now for the purposes of demo, demo, let us actually check if Claude Code is actually able to hit my GitHub MCP server. So list all my repositories on GitHub. My username is Harshad Dynamite. Now, because the Claude Code is assigned to me under a different username and on my GitHub there's a different username, so there is a slight chance that Claude Code will use the same username that it has got for me. So I have specifically mentioned that this is my GitHub username. Now, if I want to, I'm going to say yes to this. Now, see, this is using up these many tokens over here. So anyhow, we have got these many repos under my user. So cool this is. Now, there are hundred of or maybe thousands of MCP servers out there. Now, you don't really want to add each and every one of them, because every time you add a new MCP server, the description, the name of that MCP server is going to sit in your context, and this is going to take up some token. And you will, if you do that, you will be using Claude Code with a higher context, with a bigger context, and we don't really want that. So only add those MCP servers which are necessary for your work. Alright, so now that we have got GitHub integrated into our Claude Code and it is up and running, let's add this project of ours into our source control or Git. Now for that, I've got a prompt ready, and here is the prompt. So if you look at that, it says create a new public GitHub repository called to-do app, initialize Git in this project, add a git ignore file that excludes bin folders, obj and .vs and star users, app settings, and the SQLite DB file. Stage all the files and push with the commit message initial commit. Now, thing to note over here is I have not given my GitHub username over here now. My understanding is that it is going to populate my GitHub username in its memory, and I'm going to just hit enter now. Alright, so we are hit with an error which says the GitHub MCP token can't create repos. Okay, so now because we didn't really added the administration permission to our token, this is why it is happening. Now, in order to fix that, what I've done is I went back to my token, and to this token over here, I have added, if I can edit this, so I have added this administration permission over here, and I'm going to make it read and write and update. Now, if you want, you can delete this token and add it again the way we did it earlier. I'm going to do the same. So in order to fix it, I'm going to exit Claude from here and come back to my PowerShell, and I'm going to first remove the GitHub MCP server for Claude, and then I'm going to add it again. This has added it, and let me clear the context, and let's call Claude again, and let's look for MCP. Yes, it is connected. Let me hit escape, and let's try this same prompt again, and let's see if it is able to do it. Okay, so I believe the app has been created, and it is asking me where should I initialize the Git for to-do app. Inside the to-do app folder, add the workspace root. So I'm going to choose the workspace root over here, and I'm going to say replace with a minimal one and submit answers. So now it is creating a public GitHub repo. It is now writing the git ignore file, and we see that things are now started coming in the difference view, the way we used to see whenever a file is binded to source control. Alright, so for some reason I see that it was able to complete this item. It has marked it done, but for the others I don't really see anything. But anyways, let's go to our GitHub. Let's look for repositories. Okay, so I can see this to-do app over here, and let us see if we actually have anything. So it has not really added any files, right? No problem. Okay, so now it has resumed again, and I think it is picking up now. Okay, so now I think it has committed it, and let's go back to our repository. Let me hit refresh over here, and yes, I can now see that my to-do app has come up and all the files are coming over here. I can see the git ignore and everything else. So I think the files have now been committed. I've got the SLN, and I have got this Claude folder also. So whatever things that we add further on in this video, we can commit it to GitHub and share it with the team, so that the team also has the similar set of skills, sub-agents and everything else that we are going to cover in this video here. Alright, so now that we have the GitHub MCP server configured, next we need something that can give us the most latest and the greatest documentation directly from Microsoft. In order to get that, there is this MCP server from Microsoft called Microsoft Docs, and in order to get that, there is this command that I'm going to paste over here. Now, if you look at this command closely, this is not directly an MCP server, but it is a plugin. Okay, and once I hit enter, it is going to add it. Now it has added successfully this marketplace, and now we need to add one more command, and let's just install that. I'm going to choose the user scope one, and now it is installed on my Claude Code terminal. So now if I look at the MCPs, it shall give me, okay, so I need to exit it once, exit, and let's call the Claude again. Let's look at the MCP servers, and we have this plugin MCP from from Microsoft Docs. So now every time we ask it to write a piece of code for us using the Microsoft Docs, it is going to query the Microsoft Doc for us and write the code that is aligned with the Microsoft practices. Now, let us say that you were working on a feature and then there is an important bug that comes in and your manager wants it to be done first. What do? Like, well, most developers would stash their changes, create a new branch, and start working on the bug now. Meanwhile, all that conversation that you did with Claude Code on that terminal, you are going to lose, or Claude is going to lose all its context, because now you will be talking about the bug on the same terminal with the Claude Code. Now, this is where this concept comes in called the Git Worktrees, and Claude is designed exactly to work pretty well with Git Worktrees. Now, what is a Git Worktree first of all? A Git Worktree is a separate working directory that shares the same repository history. So you can have your main checkout in one folder and a work tree in a different branch in a different folder. Same repo, but totally isolated file system. Your changes in one folder do not touch the other folder. And for Claude Code, it means each session gets its own work tree, its own branch, and it can never accidentally override what another session is doing. So you get true parallel workflow. And setting this up is pretty straightforward. So I'm on my Claude terminal now, and in order to create the work trees, I'll have to come to my bash mode or the shell mode. I'm going to put this command, which is going to create a new feature branch called add a memory cache inside this folder over here. After that, I'm going to create another work tree for my bug, which is the branch name is AI agent header. Inside this other folder called to do apps -AI header, and hit enter. Now I've got two work trees created, and if you want to look at the available work trees, just hit git work tree list and it will show you the 2 or the 3 branches including main that you have got on your local. Alright, now once I've done that, I'm going to create a new terminal, and inside this terminal I'm going to cd into my first feature branch or that folder and run Claude over here. Then I'm going to create another terminal, and over here I'm going to cd into the other branch or into the other work tree and then run Claude over here. So now I've got 2 parallel sessions where I can work in parallel. Alright, now both of them will have a different context window. So on the first terminal, I'm going to put this prompt, which is going to add this memory cache into my API endpoints, and I'm going to hit enter over here, and this has started working. And onto my bug fixture, I'm going to put this prompt, which is going to add a header with this value Claude AI agent, and hit enter. Now both of them are working in parallel, untouched. The code changes will remain untouched. Now let it run. Okay, so the first one is asking me for yes or no. I'm going to say yes to it, and to this also I'm going to say yes. Now both of them are working in parallel. Now it is asking me for some input again, while my other terminal is now done. So we let it run. Alright, so now it has done the changes, and because we are on the main branch, we don't really see any change over here. And if you want to look at the changes in the real file, you will have to switch the branch from here, from main to whatever branch you want. But because I can see the changes very well being mentioned over here, I think I can live with that. And so now the next item is to commit these changes if you are fine with the change. So now you can either ask Claude to commit it, or you can come to bash mode and commit it yourself. If you are using Claude terminal or Claude Code to commit, you are using up tokens. So this time we are going to commit it ourselves just to save some tokens. So over here on my feature branch, I'm going to come to my shell mode and do a git add, and then I'm going to commit this again in my shell mode, and then in my other branch, the bug fixing branch, I am again going to come to shell mode and add it, and then I'm going to commit this again in the shell mode, and this both my changes on both the work trees are now committed. Now we need to merge them to the master. So now this is the place where I was on my master branch. So I'm going to come to shell, come to my workspace, root, merge the feature branch, then merge the bug branch, and I'm pretty much done. And I can now see the new changes that has been added over here. And inside my program, I should see the memory cache being added somewhere. Yeah, so I can see the cache options being added over here. And now when you are done with both the work trees, don't forget to remove the work trees and the branches. Now let us get rid of these 2 terminals that we had, or let's just say git work tree prune and just say yes. and now both my work trees are now deleted. And if you want to confirm that, just inside your bash mode, just to git work tree list, and it will just show you your main branch. So here is something that happens when you work with Claude Code for a few weeks. You end up writing the same instructions over and over. Add an endpoint, follow this structure. Add a migration, do it this way. Review the code and check for these things. You are not just prompting now, you are reteaching Claude Code your project standards every single time. Skills fix this. A skill is a markdown file that tells exactly how Claude should handle a very specific task in your project. You write it once and then invoke it with a slash command, and Claude Code always follows it. The key thing to understand about skills is that they are not just prompts, they are institutional knowledge. They are how you encode the way your team builds the software. So Claude doesn't have to guess it. And as your project grows, you add more skills. And over time, Claude Code starts to feel like it genuinely understands how your team works, because it does. Let's see how we can actually add a skill to our Claude Code. Now, in order to do that, I've got a prompt which is somewhat like this. It says create a Claude Code skill file called add endpoint.markdown.md that defines how we can actually add a new API endpoint to the project. Now, how do I actually want to add a new endpoint? I want to create a new controller action or a minimal API endpoint, because this is a minimal API project, and then create a request DTO with a fluent validation validator class. Register the validator in the program.cs using add validators from assembly, and then add a validation middleware pipeline if not already present. Write a xunit unit test covering the happy path and at least one validation failure. So now this is a custom instruction that I've given to Claude, which it is going to follow every time I call or every time I request to add a new endpoint to my project. So I'm going to copy all of it and then paste it over here and hit enter. Alright, so now it is asking to check for Claude folder and any test folder. I'm going to say so now it is writing this add endpoint.md skill file, and yes, so it has done it. Now if we come to this Claude folder over here, there is a skills folder that has been created, and there is this add endpoint.md file. Now this is the entire markdown file. Now I have got an extension which actually helps you to understand or read the markdown file pretty well. So there is this extension called markdown, and there are chances that you already have it, but markdown all in one is the extension. Just download it, and once you do that, you would see this little icon over here which will convert this file into a proper well structured markdown file, easier for you to read. So now if you look at it, it has got a few steps. Create the request DTO, adds the fluent validator, then validator registration, adds the endpoint to program.cs as a minimal API, and then it should also have a xunit test to it. Pretty well. Pay close attention to this workspace directory that we have got. It has got a Claude folder, then inside that a skills, and then this is the actual skill. Now there is a little change that we'll have to do over here. So each of the skills should have its own folder. So inside this folder, I'm going to add a new folder called add endpoint, and then I'm going to bring this file inside this folder, and this thing should be renamed to just skill.md. That's it. Cool. Now let us try to run the skill or create an endpoint using this. So come back to the Claude terminal over here, and let's just type skill. Okay, let's hit escape, and it is not actually finding our skill right now. Now in order for Claude to read our new skill, we'll have to once exit from the Claude. So I'm going to say exit, and we are out of Claude now. Now let's reopen Claude, but now if I open it, I will lose my previous context, right? So I'm going to say -- resume, and now Claude is giving me all the conversations that I had with it in the past. I'm going to choose the most recent one, and see, we are now back at the place where we left. Okay, and now I'm going to query the skills again, and we see that new skill over there which says add endpoint. So let's enter that. All right, so now how do we run this skill? So name of the skill becomes the custom slash command. So if I do slash add endpoint, we get this as a slash command. I'm going to hit enter, and Claude is going to execute this skill. Alright, so now it says I need a few specifics before I start. So now it is asking me for the resource and route, the HTTP verb I want, the request shape, and the validation rules. So I'm going to give all of it, and it shall now create a new API endpoint for me, and also, should write the unit test for it. Alright, so it has now executed the skill, created several lines of code, and now we see that there is a new validator that has been added. Then there is also a test folder that it has added for my test. And then my validator also has been tested over here. So pretty cool. And if we look at the source control, it has brought in several things over here, but now there are several DLLs that it has added to the GitHub, to the Git changes. Probably I'll have to improve the git ignore file so that it does not track any DLLs. Alright, so here is a real scenario. You ask Claude Code to refactor your service class and it makes 20 something file changes across your code base. Halfway through, you look at what has been done and you think to yourself that this is not what I wanted and this whole approach is wrong. What do? Now, this is the point where you could use checkpointing. Of course, you can go to Git and undo all those 20 set of changes, but here is where checkpointing helps you. So Claude Code uses Git snapshots to save your project state before any big operation. If something goes wrong, just one command puts you back to where you actually started. Now let's see checkpointing in action. So we did this huge change in our previous chapter, and now let's say I don't want that to happen. So I'm going to say rewind, and now Claude gives me all the possible conversations that we had in the previous. Now at the very last we see the current state, and above that we see the last skill that we executed, that was the add endpoint skill. So I'm going to undo this thing, and now it gives me an option to restore code and conversation, or just restore the conversation, or just restore the code, or summarize from here, or summarize up to here. Now let's do a restore code, or let's just do the restore code, and my understanding is it should now revert everything that it did. Alright, so I can see that the changes are gone, or somewhat they are gone. Okay, so not all of the changes are gone, because I can see the test classes are gone now, even the validators are gone. But yes, if we do it gradually, we'll be able to undo or create checkpoints as and when we want. Now, how does this help us? Here's the thing about checkpointing that people don't talk enough. Checkpointing is not just a safety net, it actually changes how you prompt Claude. When you know that you can roll back, you can give Claude Code more ambitious tasks. You will let it run further before you review, and that is when you start to see what this tool is actually capable of. Everything we have covered so far has been Claude Code session doing one thing at a time. Sub-agents change that completely. The idea is simple. Instead of asking Claude to do one thing at a time in a sequence, you break the whole work into pieces and send each piece to one specialist agent that is very good at doing that particular thing. A test writing agent whose entire job is to just write good tests. A code reviewer agent who just reviews code but never changes it. An implementation agent whose entire focus is on just to implement a new feature. These run in parallel, you coordinate, you review, and Claude does the heavy lifting. So now let's see how we can actually build a sub-agent inside Claude Code terminal. So I'm going to paste this command called agents, and it says agents running library. So no sub agents are currently running, and inside the library it says create a new agent. But before that, see that we have got a few built-in agents, one of which is plan. Now if you try to plan something, it is the plan agent that comes into action and it does the heavy lifting and just reverts its result to the main agent. Now we are going to create a new agent, and I'm going to hit enter. Now what do you want? You want a personal agent that just lives in your home directory, or if you want a project based agent so that you can share it to your other team members. So let's go ahead with the project agent and let's choose generate with Claude. Now Claude is going to help us create this agent. Now it says create a new agent, described what this agent should do and when it should be used. So I'm going to say help me review my code, identify issues and suggest improvement for readability, maintainability, performance and best practices as suggested by Microsoft. If required, feel free to use the Microsoft Learn MCP tool. So recall that we added this Microsoft Learn MCP server. I want that when someone is reviewing my code, it should use the best practices. He should be aware of the best practices of Microsoft. So I've given it that you are free to use the Microsoft Learn MCP tool. I'm going to hit enter. So now it is adding or generating the agent from the description, right? So now it is asking us what tools do you want to give it. Now by default all the tools are selected, so that includes MCP tools also. So I'm going to hit continue. Now it also asks what model do you want to use. So at the time of this recording we had Sonnet, Opus and Haiku. I'm going to stick with Sonnet. And what color do you want? So I'm going to choose, let's go with cyan, and let it be in the project scope. And it now says press S or enter to save, E to edit and save. Okay, I'm going to hit enter, and over here I would see this agent being created over here. Now let's again look for that markdown extension, and this is my MS Code reviewer. Now it has got a core mission, some operational workflows, Microsoft specific checklist using a Microsoft Learn MCP tools, its own memory. So agent will have its own memory, very much like the Claude MD file, and the types of memory and all those kind of stuff. So it is a very detailed agent that it has created. Pretty cool. Okay, so now we have the agent ready. And if we look at this solution explorer, we would see that the agent's name is MS Code Reviewer. Now let's try to use this agent and figure out what it can actually do. So I'm going to come back to my Claude Code terminal, and if you see over here inside the library create new agent, we now have this MS Code Reviewer agent. So I'm going to escape here, and I'm going to say use the MS Code Reviewer to review my code and hit enter. So now you see this MS Code Reviewer has come up, and it is in the cyan color that we chose. By default, the agent is going to run in the foreground, but you can hit Control P to make it run in the background. So you see one local agent is in action, and if I look for task and hit enter, you will see that this MS Code Reviewer is in action and it is in progress over here. Now let's go back and we'll let it run, and when it is done, it will come back and report its progress or report its result to the main agent and over here in the terminal. Okay, so now it says that the Microsoft code review of the new patch endpoint has been completed. I think it is preparing the results now. So now this is what we get as a result of our code review agent. Now this is the task that was completed. Now here is the summary with one factual correction upfront. Note on the report, the reviewer claimed the new test files do not yet exist on disk. That's wrong. Okay, so we did a checkpoint thing and it didn't really clean up the test very well. But anyways, also questionable. The reviewer warns that minimal APIs will try to bind to this object from the request. Then there is a lower priority. Now, Claude might give you several suggestions, but based on your code base, based on your project practices, you might want to fix only a few of them. It might also give you some more performance optimization techniques. What has been my experience so far is a premature optimization is not a very good thing to do all the time. Okay, so just be mindful what all suggestions you are going to implement in your project. Alright, so let's now bring it all together. We connected Claude Code to two external tools using MCP, GitHub and Microsoft Learn. So it has real context and not just what's there in your code base already. Then we set up Git Worktrees so multiple sessions can run in parallel without conflict. We define skills so our project standards are encoded and applied every time. Then we set up checkpointing so that Claude could run without any risk. And then we built and ran a sub-agent to parallelize our work across specialist agent. Now, I want to be honest with you. None of this is magic. Claude Code still makes mistakes. It still needs your judgment. It still needs you to review what it produces. But what's changed is where your time goes now. You spent less time writing boilerplate, less time running the same task again, and less time context switching. You spend more time on making decisions that actually require you. That is the shift. And once you feel it, it's very hard to go back. Now, there is still more to this, and in the next part of this series, we are going to go deeper into multi-agent orchestration, hooks and automation, and how to use Claude Code on existing larger code bases. And not just a greenfield project, a real production code base with complexity and history. And that is where things will get really interesting. If this was useful to you, subscribe because the next video is going to go further. If you have questions or if you want me to cover up something specifically, drop it in the comments. I read every one of them and I'll see you in the next one.